In this next video, we will be completing the placket and the bib. And first of all, though, we need to pin the plackets. So you have to consider how the item is going into the machine, and you always have the bigger part of the garment to your left hand side, so you have the no fabric on the right. So this one we're pinning, this side we're pinning from the bottom to the hem, and to the collar. So we're placing our pins in here, but then you have to check when you're turning that over that it's catching the back part of the placket. So we're placing pins in this way, turn that over and it's catching. You're also placing some pins this way as well to hold it in place. So it should, because you've pressed it perfectly before, it should be catching it, which it is. There shouldn't be a problem there. You see, turning it over and then placing some pins this way as well. You're going to work all the way to the top of the collar here. Place a pin there, you can see. And then when it comes to the other side, you need to turn this around because the garment is to the left hand side. So on this side of the collar, we'll be working plackets. We will be working from the top of the collar to the bottom. So now I'm pinning this way.
You're basically pinning in the direction it's going into the machine.
Absolutely. And then place some pins this way as well. There. So we're now going to stitch our placket. We're placing our foot down, lower our needle, and you're stitching it's very close, it's very similar stitch line to the bias binding that we did the understitching. And so we're going to hold on to those tails again, so you're helping that fabric go underneath the foot, the machine, the feed dogs, and then you're doing the top stitch. So I will complete this side of the placket on this side of the garment, but then when we come to do the second side, you have to start from the collar end, working down to the bottom of the bib. So again, we're using a cream thread, so you can see what we're stitching. We would normally use lovely colour green, so you wouldn't see the stitching. So as we come to this side, and it is thicker because you're working with all the different fabrics, so if you feel like you need to maneuver with the dial, and then I'm going to go a backward stitch. And you can see I'm holding on to this collar because it's very thick, and so I'm holding on to the collar as it was doing that backward stitch to help the machine go underneath. So that's that side finished, but when you come to stitch the second side, you need to start from the collar and do a backward stitch and go all the way down to the bottom. So we now have our beautifully machined plackets, and I'm going to turn that over, and you can see we just did a gentle press on the back of the plackets just to make it look lovely. So then we're going to turn that back. Now we're going to move our left hand side of our placket over to our right hand side, but in the instructions obviously, and you would do this, you're going to marry up the bottom. But what's imperative, when you come to the top, you need to make sure that these are matching. So if this is a little bit out of line or sync, it doesn't matter. It's more important that this matches at the top. So there you can see that's matching. And then we're going to come down to the bottom. You can see it's just slightly a little bit out, but that doesn't matter. We're just going to move that over, and we're going to place our pins just to hold it in place.
So you're not going to stretch out the bottom to make it fit.
No.
You're better off starting from the top.
Yes.
And then gently placing the placket down.
Yes.
And then seeing if there's any misalignment here.
Yes.
And then now you're going to stitch just across here about 5 millimeters, just to hold the plackets together. So to complete the bib, we are going to work on the wrong side, and we are going to pin the bib to the front. So we've put some pins in on the notches just to help you align them. And if you can see here, if you're finding that your fabric of your placket is sort of getting in your way, you could always just place another pin here just to keep that out of your way while you're pinning it to the main garment. So these two notches, they align. Then you have another set of notches here and another set of notches here. And then of course this has already been stitched. So we're just pinning this section and then we're going to sew it. But it's easier to work from this side of the fabric. So when I'm lifting this up and I'm aligning the pins, I'm going to be pinning from the main garment side into the bib fabric. So firstly, you can align your notches, and we're going to put our pins in like so. And we're going to put that pin in there. And then you can come up to your next notch. So I like to sort of maneuver the fabric a little bit out of the way like that. Align your raw edges and your notch. So I would pin your notches first. And then you can pin in between. And that stay stitching that you're seeing there has prevented this fabric from stretching, so everything will fit in nicely. And also putting the pins in this direction helps the fabric to have some movement. When you're putting the pins in across, you're sort of stopping that area from having any movement. Now that your notches are pinned, you can start to work in between the pins and the notches. So I'm going to bring that up. And I'm just going to align those raw edges. Like that. Put in as many pins as you need to. And what I'll do is I'll just pin to the center front. And then we'll stitch it and show it to you completed. So can you see how even where it looks like I've got a little bit more fabric underneath, by pinning from this side, it sort of fits in and bends into each other quite nicely. And a good point as well is to, once you've pinned, obviously you're going to be sewing from this side, just check underneath that no fabric has been twisted. So once this is all pinned in, you'll go around and pin everything. Then you'll start from this stitching line here. So you can start just there and sew all the way around until you reach this end here. And as you're sewing, just work on a little bit at a time, 1 centimeter seam allowance, and just keep checking that the fabric is lying nice and flush underneath.
So now we've popped our foot above the where we're starting our stitch there. So we've popped our needle in at the 1 centimeter seam allowance, and you're going to go a locking stitch and then carry on. So you're placing the edge of the overlock up against your 1 centimeter seam allowance, and the first part of this seam, it's a straight edge, but it's when it comes into the curve. So you can see where Lisa's put the pins in, marrying your notches up, but then we're going to, as we're coming up to each notch, So this is where you need to make sure that you are not doing any more than a 1 centimetre seam allowance, because if you did, you might then create little pleats in your seam. So it does have to be exactly 1 centimetre. You can see you've got a curve coming in now. So we're not doing it any more or any less, and I'm just following that 1 centimetre. So I'm just going to just machine to the middle of the bib. You can see with my fingers, again, I'm checking. See, this could quite easily happen, the creasing under there. So you've got to feel with your fingers and check that nothing's getting caught. So the black pin is the middle. So I'm just going to stop there.
Also bear in mind that when you're sewing over those layers of the placket here, you can stitch over that, and you can reverse stitch and then go back over. If you're using a fabric that has more of a weight to it, that'll just hold the placket to the bib a bit more securely. So you could sew over the placket, reverse stitch over the placket, and then come back and carry on sewing. I like to do that when I'm using a fabric that's a bit more weighty and could do with that reinforcement.
So there, okay. So then you can see that's machined in.
To complete the bib front, you just need to press the seam allowances out to the side, and then you can also just check underneath that there's no folds or fabric that's been caught. I'm going to remove these 2 pins now, if you did use them to hold the placket in place. So when we turn this over to the right side, this will come later in the instructions, but it's worth just explaining now. You have a couple of options to finish the front. So one is that you could put buttons and buttonholes in. You can use the pattern piece to locate your sizing to see where they should go, or you can pop the shirt on when it is finished, and you can decide where you'd like to put your buttons and buttonholes. Just make sure that they are evenly spaced out. The other alternative is, if you like it to not have the buttonholes, you could just decide how open you want this to be. You could place a pin through all of the layers, and you could create a box stitch. So it does explain later in the instructions how to do that. The other option is that you could also just put a buttonhole up at the top to keep it closed. So you've got a couple of options for finishing the bib. For the moment, you can carry on with the instructions, and later on, when you can try it on, you can decide how you want to complete the front.